You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Sorry about that mix-up there. I was on the wrong microphone, Joe.
There's just too many to choose from.
There is. There's like 9,000 microphones in this place. Just in case we have a big group of people to interview, Joe.
Yeah, just in case.
Yeah.
We've got a large group.
I'm Jeremiah Bannister, the stud stallion here in Grand Rapids.
And I am Joe Elder.
And you're listening to Paleo Radio right here at WPRR. We have a fancy call-in number, and we invite everybody to give us a jingle here at 616-656-1680. Again, one more time, 616-656-1680. But Joe, it's another beautiful day, my friend.
It is. It's wonderful weather. Thank you guys for joining us. And man, it was a lovely drive in. I can tell you that. Wow. Bad weather galore, but that's Michigan. That's the way it is. And, you know, for us, we just treat it like it's any other day. And in other parts of the country, people get terrified and shut everything down and go hide in their cubbies. But not today. We have a show to do.
Yeah, speaking of terrified and shutting everything down, we have found ourselves, apparently, Joe, at the middle of another conspiracy that we created.
Oh, no. How did we do that?
It's true. A conspiracy of our own demise here. The Illuminati, apparently, there's a Twitter account out there and a tweet that says that we are an Illuminati psyop run by Freemasons and the Vatican hierarchs. And there's sleuths on the case. So I guess the Redditor investigators.
Well, please look to FOIA that and see what you can come up with.
Yeah, FOIA that. You can check out all of it.
We're very upset, and we have a lot of things to hide, so be careful.
Speaking of things not to hide are these topics. We're going to begin today by talking about a huge issue, highly controversial. In fact, many competing narratives kind of going on at the same time. We're going to talk about Russia and the cyber attacks.
Yes, we're covering Russia. We're also going to cover the Snaketivity and Christmas. It's that time of year. The war on Christmas has begun. We've drawn our swords. We're ready to attack Christianity for all the awful that it is. Apparently, every winter we do this.
And it is that time of year. You know, we had, hey, man, people can go online and check out our very first Christmas episode we ever had.
Yes.
And that's a Google Hangout show. It was in my living room. At my house in front of the Christmas tree.
Yes.
And we were sitting actually right next to each other. We were cuddled up real close.
Yep.
Like sports announcers.
And it was a Christmas special. It wasn't a happy holiday special. So look at us just being very, very controversial there.
Right. And then we're going to talk about some kids getting violent with digital heroin. And I'll tell you, Joe, when I saw this, I kind of chuckled. And then as I was reading it, my first impression was, boy, this guy's a real radical. But as it was going along, I'm like, man, this is actually an interesting article. I really want to know more about what Dr. Nicholas Carteras is saying when he's talking about digital heroin and kids being addicted to video games and to anything that glows.
Just addicted to screen time,
yeah, right?
Yeah, and then after that, we promised last week we were going to cover Rio. We will definitely cover Rio and what went on with the Olympics and basically how the Olympics kind of begs, borrows, and steals and doesn't really follow through on their promises.
We're going to talk about an issue we said we'd talk about again last week. It has to do with, I believe, 5 recommendations on how you can make people who are overweight or LGBTQ more acceptable in your school. And it's kind of controversial. Some of it I like, some of it I'm not exactly too sure. But we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to finish up with a conversation about North Carolina, Joe.
Yes, in North Carolina where
crazy town.
Some Republicans stripped a little bit of power on their way out, just a little tad, and tried to make sure no one could see that. So, yes, we are going to cover that and get into it.
Yeah, little eatsy-weetses, huh?
Yes, just a little tiny bit. But, boy, there's a lot of things going on with Russia.
Yes, there's a ton of this stuff going on with Russia. And, you know, this isn't a new topic. I mean, we've been talking about this as it's been unfolding and developing in different directions for a while. And there's a piece here. And actually, Joe shared it with me. And I encourage everyone to go over and check it out. You're going to have to, because there's absolutely no way that we are going to be able to go through that entire article.
Oh, no, we can't. But that article is a trove of information that I think people should at least dive into.
Yeah, it's got a lot of stories. The Perfect Weapon, How Russian Cyber Power Invaded the U.S. It's by Eric Lipton, David Sanger, and Scott Shane of the New York Times. We figured we'd mention them all. It's byline stuff.
Yes.
All right. When Special Agent Adrian Hawkins of the Federal Bureau of Investigation called the Democratic National Committee in September 2015 to pass along some troubling news about its computer network, he was transferred naturally to the help desk. His message was brief, if alarming. At least one computer system belonging to the DNC had been compromised by hackers, and federal investigators had named the Dukes, right? It's a cyber espionage team linked to the Russian government. So right out of the gate, you have a situation where, and this is an interesting thing, the Dukes.
Yes. Yeah, called the Dukes because they actually have a dossier. The intelligence community has been following Russia well before today. So it's kind of the same as, like it's Christmas time. So what is it? The Wet Foot Bandits, right? From Home Alone, where they have a signature in what they do. And when they rob the house, they have a certain thing they do to let everyone know it's them. In that same case, the FBI and CIA has been developing a dossier on Russian hacking and to see if it meets the criteria of hacking if it has a signature. And indeed, in their assumptions, the FBI says that they do, and they call it the Dukes.
Yeah. Interestingly, the article goes on and it actually compares. I don't know if you caught this, about how it compares the situation of cyber espionage to Nixon and Watergate.
Oh.
Did you notice that?
No, I didn't.
It says right here, it was the cryptic first sign of a cyber espionage and information warfare campaign devised to disrupt the 2016 presidential election. The first such attempt by a foreign power in American history. What started as an information gathering option, intelligence officials believe, ultimately morphed into an effort to harm one candidate, Hillary Clinton, and tip the election to her opponent, Donald Trump. And they compare it to trying to get information in the whole Watergate ordeal. But I thought, only fake news would fail to point out the similarities between Watergate and Podesta emails.
Absolutely, because there are plenty.
There's huge. So it was interesting they brought it up. But they say the White House missed signals, Joe. They said there were missed signals, there were slow responses. The article says they continue to underestimate the seriousness of the attack, and the White House's reluctance to respond forcefully meant the Russians have not paid a heavy price for their actions, a decision that could prove critical in deterring future cyber attacks.
Yes, and also the way the FBI got a hold of the Clinton campaign was questionable. Apparently they're not even but 2 miles from each other, and they didn't even go in person. The FBI agent that made the phone call basically just made a quick phone call to the front desk, and the person at the front desk, whose name is Yared Tamin, who's the tech supporter and contractor at the DNC, he fielded the call, and he's no expert in cyber attacks. He basically Googled the Dukes and to conduct a core search history of the DNC computer system logs to look for hints of such a cyber intrusion. And by his own account, he didn't look very hard. And even after Special Agent Hawkins of the FBI called back repeatedly over the next several weeks, it's in part because he wasn't a certain caller, or he wasn't certain if he was part of the FBI. So Mr. Tamin gets this call from a guy who says he's in the FBI, says, hello, I'm FBI agent so-and-so and X, Y, and Z, and you've been hacked. He's fielding that call just at his front desk. So he has a reason to kind of be questioned. It's questionable. Is this guy really with the FBI, or are we just being pranked? And because of that, that spurned a lack of decision-making that allowed even further hacking to occur.
Yeah, I was thinking, it says that Obama didn't do anything. I don't think he could have. One of the things, we hear a lot of very authoritative people from institutions who are commissioned by our government and consequently the people to investigate these things. But that's been true for a long, long time. And people have been frustrated about conclusions. In fact, there was a link. I don't know if it's Consortium News. I'm going to reference them in a while. But where they shared it, and they had a list of the original documents from government agencies talking about things with high confidence, ranging from WMDs and listing off. And it wasn't just saying you said there were WMDs. It actually lists the exact claims. And there's 96 pages of this, of different things that they've said. So it's not that it's wrong. It's that the people, unless evidence that's falsifiable is brought forward, they're not going to tolerate it.
Yes.
There's no more of that.
Well, and I think we're 2 weeks away from having a heavy load of that dump. My personal opinion is that the idea of if Russia did it or not isn't even the question. It's the motives of what they did when they collected the data.
Yeah, we disagree on that.
I know it.
We disagree.
I understand.
big time.
Well,
Yeah.
and my reasoning is simply this. If the NSA has the intelligence to be downloading and looking at the information of Angela Merkel like they were 2 years ago, and we didn't doubt the capability of the NSA there or the CIA. You have NSA confirmed it now. FBI has backed up what the CIA says, and so now you have all three of those intelligence communities have publicly said, and not with unnamed people, have publicly come out of being anonymous and stated that it's all in one way. But their intent is what I draw a question to. I don't know personally if you can prove that Russia that Russia was favoring one over the other. I think you can prove who takes the data, but I don't think you can prove how the data gets disseminated.
Well, and here's the thing. There's a lot of people. In fact, there was an open letter written by former hierarchs there in the intelligence community of William Binney, former technical director, world geopolitical and military analyst for NSA, co-founder of SIGINT, S-I-G-I-N-T. You have Mike Gravel. He's the former adjutant, top secret control officer. You have a whole list of these people: Elizabeth Murray, Larry Johnson, Ray McGovern. All of them have high level positions, and all of them have come to the conclusion that it's not a hack, but it's a leak. In fact, they said all signs point to leaking, not hacking.
I sure wish they would make their way out of consortium news and into something a little bit bigger and brighter.
Well, that's where they come from. That's what I'm saying. All these people. That's why I listed who they were. I don't want to shoot the messenger when they're people who are actually intimately connected to the institutions we're talking about. But when going through it, you say a hack. When someone in a remote location electronically penetrates operating systems, firewalls, or any cyber protected system. All signs to them are pointed to leaks when someone physically takes data out of an organization and gives it to some other person or organization. The last thing I'll say about that is simply that they bring up a point, and they say that they worked at the NSA, a lot of these people, and they said the NSA, the bottom line is that the NSA would know where and how any hacked emails from the DNC, HRC, or any other servers were routed through the network. The evidence that should be there is absent. Otherwise, it would surely be brought forward. Since this could be done without any danger to sources and methods. Thus, we conclude that the emails were leaked by an insider, as was the case with Edward Snowden and Chelsea Manning. Such an insider could be anyone in the government department or agency with access to NSA databases, or perhaps someone within the DNC.
And then the NSA comes out and says themselves, there shouldn't be any doubt in anybody's mind. This was not something that was done casually. This is not something that was done by chance. This was a target selected that was not selected purely and arbitrarily. This is Michael Rogers, who's the NSA director. He said this was a conscious effort by a nation state to attempt to achieve a specific effect. So when the start of that quote says that the NSA has the capability to know who and where, the director for the NSA has said we do know who and where.
But that's not how it ends. It ends by saying that they could release that without any danger whatsoever to source or methods. If that's true, and they have not released it, then what's the reason for not releasing that evidence? Because if you don't release the evidence, you say I trust the allegation. But remember, we're back in that place where we can find an extraordinary amount of instances where we weren't presented with information that was falsifiable. We were presented with an assurance, and we for good reason trusted those people because that's a good default position to have. It's their job.
Yes. And I think the other thing, though, too, is people aren't willing to look at the evidence that's there. Cozy Bear and Fancy Bear are two hacking institutions that are well established. The CIA and FBI have known them for 4 years. They know they've been working with the Kremlin for 4 years. They've been tracking them for 4 years and what they do. The FBI agent that got a hold of the DNC also has in their WikiLeaks emails, they have the WikiLeaks emails that they posted that show when the FBI contacted them to tell them they've been hacked, which was early. And the FBI told them not to transmit it over their emails because they were watching what the hackers were doing. So on top of the fact that the FBI knew it was happening, they watched the hackers and what they were going about doing and said this modus operandi is consistent with Russia. Now,
but that's the whole thing is what you're citing there for people who don't remember. What you're citing is that they say, yes, Fancy Bear was connected to something, and they say that it looks as though the methods are consistent and that the motivation is consistent. But I would be interested to know how they know what the motivation is. I thought, and I feel strange saying this, But I thought Tucker Carlson actually asked a legitimate question when he said, listen, can you please provide the most specific evidence of this so that we aren't simply dealing with allegation? Is there something more? And he asked it 5 days in a row to some of the top people promoting this stuff. And people can go back and watch it and say currently, as it stands, there's no indication that I know of, no public evidence that's able to be falsified, that says that what was done with Russian phishing schemes in the past was anything more than that, anything more than what happened even here in Grand Rapids with the hospital system that had the exact same signals going to them. It
wasn't a phishing site done by a group that uses the same URLs that connects back to a Russian-speaking computer, which is what the FBI came up with.
It was the same one. It was the same. That's what I'm saying. The hospital, I thought, was the same thing, because they had to investigate that, and they said there was the signal that was going to them was the same signal that was going to a lot of them that they thought was a backdoor channel.
Yes.
Coming from Russian servers.
Yes. And I also, too, I'll extend this point, too, that usually when people make claims, they require evidence. And I have yet to see heavy evidence from the leaking portion of the group that support that. Where's their evidence it was an individual leak? Where's their evidence that was an anonymous person?
The guy who got the leak, Craig Murray, he came out publicly and said that somebody handed it to him on a bench in D.C. He said he's like this is not. And WikiLeaks has broken protocol, saying it's not a state actor at all. It said it's not the state. It's a person. And they normally don't do that. But then again, that's an allegation, too.
And WikiLeaks also is not an unbiased source. WikiLeaks certainly has a role to play in how they feel politics need to be administered. And if they wanted transparency, they would have massively dumped all those emails at once, but they didn't. They leaked it out in 2-week successions and drips and drips because they have incentive and they have their own ideas, too. So there's tons of questions, but I'll tell you guys what. We barely even skimmed the surface of this article. It has... It has quite a list of information here. I do think that there's some serious important factors to it where, yes, the FBI, CIA, they have been wrong about things like weapons of mass destruction. This is the false equivalency to compare the assumption of the data that they have in the NSA and how advanced they are. If anything, for the last 4 years, I've been talking about the problems with the NSA because of how advanced it really is. I don't think that the information that they get is faulty. And I think that when you have all three groups that have a unified message, yes, it could be wrong. It could very well be wrong. But there's also an international community that's behind one of these lines, too. There's an international community that's scared. You look at how Germany says, look at how the elections went in the United States. We're very concerned about how cyber attacks can affect us.
Yeah.
And information, and look, I think that for the narrative, we're running off into a very funny place. And just because I understand that there's a lot of issues with just blaming Russia for how Trump gets elected, and I think that's a problem, right? We can't the intentions are something that we can't go about proving, but I think you can go about proving who the players were. And just the same way that they proved the NSA was hacking Angela Merkel. What did the NSA say to that? Prove it. Show us the hard evidence. What did they say? We can't. We can just show you what your patterns are. And the U.S. said, then we didn't do it. Mm-hmm. But did the U.S. hack Angela Merkel's phone?
Cyber war is a real deal, and that's one of the very few things that I actually may agree on with Tim Kaine. To say, hey, man, and I agree with some things with him, but to say that cyber warfare is a real deal, that it's a big thing. And I liked how in this article it said that whoever did it, and let's just say for the sake of the article that it was Russia, that Russia was using a technique that is cheaper, faster, it's more subtle. It's harder to protect against, right? And it's kind of this new thing. There's traditional ways of kicking back, kicking back against the goads of a powerful force that is putting sanctions on you and other things. There are traditional means of that with missiles or planes, things of that nature, but that ain't happening. And so what they end up doing, if that's the case, is they end up engaging in cyber warfare. It's more accessible. It's something they're able to do.
Yes.
Nations are going to have to deal with it. And in the article, it said that this is viewed kind of as a first historical thing, right? Saying that this is a kind of a new thing for American history, but it did admit that the United States, in fact, and other countries have been involved in hacking even during elections of other dignitaries.
Absolutely.
And so this is part of global warfare. This is geopolitics now. It's part of
absolutely.
It's part of it, and it needs to be taken deadly serious by every nation, not only in knowing how to protect your the country from attack, but also the nature of the game, participating in the attacks. I mean, that's how it's being played right now. It's kind of a Wild West. And this last election, we were kind of on the brunt end of things.
Yes, we were on the bright end of things, but one thing's for sure, you can't solve those problems by saying it's not existent and that it's not actually happening. Hey, stick around, folks. We have tons of extra topics to cover here at Paleo Radio. You want to do it on a 3 in or something?
No. Yeah, count it. Yeah. 1, 2, 3.
Welcome back to 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, here on Public Reality Radio. This is Paleo Radio. And we were chatting about NSA, hacks, Russia, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But boy, we have so many topics to get to. We can't necessarily stick with just one.
Yeah, and listen, folks, if you want to join the conversation at any point, and you don't even have to talk about the topic being discussed at the moment, we afford you that indulgence, and you can talk about any of the topics, but the number is 616-656-1680, and make sure to follow us like a lot of the individuals are doing all across the world on Twitter at Paleo Radio Show.
Yes, at Paleo Radio Show. Now, Snaketivity, Jeremiah.
It's true. Snaketivity, big deal, Joe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Yeah, and it's right here in Michigan.
Yep.
This is Michigan news, my man.
Yep, right here in Michigan, Snaketivity is making its appearance once again.
Yeah.
Usually, just to give people a breakdown, I mean, I think it's important that we do.
Yeah.
What's the whole point of the Snaketivity? What is it? Well, it's when different religious affiliations and groups say that they can put their symbols on a government building without letting others put their symbols on the government building. In comes Snaketivity in most cases, which is usually a symbol by the Satanic Temple. And they want to have their religious symbol up there, too. So, for instance, when Oklahoma City has, the 10 Commandments in their front lawn, they want to put a statue of Baphomet up. Or if they want to have a cross and Christmas on their town hall, then they equally want to have that representation and get their Snaketivity. So this event is taking place, is going on in Michigan again. And I think it's a great topic because it just gets into the separation of church and state issue in a real serious way.
I think it cuts to the chase, honestly.
It does.
It does. For real. It cuts to the chase because it really gets to the core of the whole thing. I mean, take the whole situation with the 10 Commandments, right? You put up a big slab, a stone that has the 10 Commandments on it. And people go, hey, this is great. This reflects our values. But there's a lot of people that say that does not reflect our values. In fact, it's not even half of those aren't even things that have to do with law or order in America at all. It's a whole bunch of stuff that's strictly religious. And so when they put it up there, there's a problem. People feel as though the state is identifying with one religion, especially when that's the only iconic symbol that happens to be there, reflecting the values of the state. So the different groups say we want to also join in. And the antithesis of that would be Satanism. It literally would be the antithesis of the 10 Commandments and saying, is it equally accessible? Does the state afford a mechanism by which diverse religious bodies are able to come in with their displays during holiday festivals and put up their ornamentation? Or is it something restricted to one specific religion? And if it is to one specific religion, then there you go.
And we have a
dead
problem.
giveaway. It's a dead giveaway that there's an issue.
And it's very important to stress that the separation of church and state is to avoid a theocracy, not to let people have whatever support and have whatever religion they want. Yes, that's a cause of, in effect, of having a secular government, is that you can have the different religious beliefs that you want. You can express them the way you want. But what the separation of church and state is about is not allowing a theocracy to take place. We didn't like what happened with the Roman Catholic Church and the relationship it had with Europe. And the Founding Fathers saw that and recognized it and said, look, as long as the government doesn't establish a certain religion to say that it has precedence over the others, you have a serious advantage in terms of equality for people and how they get treated. And that's why this is such a big issue. Now, there's always the argument of, we're a Christian nation, right? We're a Christian nation founded on Christian principles, and that's why we're allowed to have these symbols. And even I won't dispute the point that we are founded on a lot of Christian principles, because I think we are. I really do. But we are also founded on the premise that we don't let certain religions bogart the other ones.
Yeah, and if people would like to understand more about how that plays out, how you can have a country that is overwhelmingly religious and yet at the same time have a constitution that is secular. If you would like to know how that happened, you can go, and it's really rare that I would do something like this, but I'm encouraging you, in fact, to go read a book by a theocrat. You can go and read Gary North. He is a Christian Reconstructionist of the Tyler School, a very scary guy. In fact, it's his nickname, Scary Gary. Ever since he was afraid of Y2K and the kind of craziness that was surrounding that. He sold all of his books for like $0.25, and I got a whole bunch of them. And,
Scary Gary.
Yeah, Scary Gary. But Scary Gary is a historian and in fact, quite a scholar when it comes to certain periods of United States history. And he goes through and he talks about the founding of the country and the debates that happened, the theological paradigms that our founders came from. Who were their teachers? Who were they? What schools did they go to? What kind of classes did they take? Who were their professors? What influence did they have? How often did they cite them in their diaries? Different things like that. Were they Freemasons?
Yeah.
That's a big one, in fact, especially for the no religious test clause. So there's I think the chapter in that book, in Political Polytheism, his book about it, I think that chapter is available for free online, and it's a PDF, and I'm pretty sure it's called Conspiracy in Philadelphia, I think, or the Philadelphia Conspiracy. And you can check it out for yourself and say, hey, how Jesus Land was that place?
Yeah.
How Jesus Land was the convention. Were they more like John Hagee?
Yeah, what were they like?
What were they like?
Were they like Pat Robertson?
Yeah, were they Pat Robertson types,
In wigs?
Yeah, right. And so, but it's an excellent book, and it goes through and it talks about the philosophical and theological underpinnings that the founders had that led to the inclusion of the no religious test clause and the First Amendment as it was drafted. And it really is exactly that, to say a culture can be one thing, but at a state level, there is a separation there.
Yes.
Between church and state.
A clear line that there should be. And there's an MLive article that digs into it very well to get more particular. Before we do that, though, it looks like we have a caller on the line. We'll get to that as soon as we can. Who do we have there?
We'll get right now. Why not? It's Rick. He's listening in Grand Rapids. He wants to talk about religious symbolism. Welcome to the show, Rick.
Hey, Rick. How's it going?
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Joe, did I just hear you say one religion can't bogart the others?
Yes. Yeah. Not according to the states.
Well,
Stay
can
neutral.
you just, I assume that's a reference to Humphrey Bogart, but what exactly does that word mean?
No, it's actually a reference to something else, Rick. I encourage you to look it up on Google. I don't want to explain it over the radio. But it's about withholding something from somebody else. Or you have something that they want and you won't give it to them.
I see.
Yes.
By definition, selfishly appropriate or keep something, especially a lit marijuana cigarette. That's what it says right here. You go on Google and you just look up Bogart, and it has it right there, right next to Humphrey.
So there you go. I guess
next to
we
Humphrey.
did give it away on the air as to what Bogart truly means.
Yeah, Bogart was one of the great actors of all time.
Yes, he was.
At any rate, this is interesting. Now, I know from listening to you guys before that you think all religion is kind of, at best, silly, right?
I would say, well, I think it serves innate purposes, but I think we're growing out of it, to be honest.
Yeah, I believe that it also plays a purpose even in evolution. I'm entertained and informed by people like David Sloan Wilson and others on group selection and the role that religion plays. There's a book called Darwin's Cathedral that I'd encourage people to check out.
Yeah.
On that?
I think it creates a moral center for companionship, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, it serves an evolutionary purpose for that.
Have any of you heard of a book called Divinity of Doubt by Vincent Bugliosi, the prosecutor that convicted Manson?
I have not.
No.
No.
Check it out. This guy is an agnostic, and he kind of takes the theists and the atheists both to task. More so the theists, but he goes after the atheists like Sam Harris and Richard Dawkins, I believe.
Richard Dawkins, yeah. What people perceive as new atheism.
Yeah.
Because what he says is there a God? He says, I don't know, and neither do you. And he says it's just as foolish for the atheist to be absolutely certain there is no God as it is for the theist to say there is, because, frankly, we don't know. That's kind of off topic. As far as these symbols are concerned, I assume that because America, although it's not enshrined in the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence, it was a letter that Thomas Jefferson sent to somebody. It was a concept he had in his mind about separation of church and state, which is certainly a good idea. But, of course, in most other countries, well, I shouldn't say most other countries, I would say in non-Western countries, I'm thinking of Iran and Iraq and countries like that, which are predominantly Muslim, if not exclusively, although there are different kinds of Islam. Like
and
Sunni.
Straight-up theocracies, right?
Sure, Iraq is not that.
Yeah.
Neither is Syria, despite all the horror going on there. But I guess since we're near the Christmas time now, and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa, and I don't know if Ramadan has come and gone or not, but we have all these kind of different holidays coming together now. And it's interesting, maybe this is a little bit off topic, but I'm sure you've all heard of Bill O'Reilly and his crusade against the war on Christmas.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
of course.
That's part of the reason why we introduced this topic.
Yeah,
Bill
O'Reilly listens to the show.
Yeah.
He's told me
I bet he does.
He texts me every day.
Yeah, he's like, man, that one sucked. What are you talking about Snaketivity for?
He's on it.
But what's really silly, and I know you guys know this, and I as a Christian know it, I guess it escapes Bill O'Reilly's attention that Christmas is in fact a pagan holiday. I mean, if you think about it, when I was a kid, I enjoyed, Santa Claus and all that stuff. But even as a kid, I used to wonder, I wonder, first of all, how can there even be flying reindeer? How can this old man live at the North Pole and he never dies? And he makes toys up there, and how does Santa Claus get around the whole world in 24 hours, and blah, blah, blah.
Sure.
But beyond that, what does that have to do with the birth of Christ, which, if you assume Jesus did exist, and even some atheists agree that that's true, that there was such a man, but not that he was divine. But, the point is, what has Santa Claus and the mistletoe and Yule logs and Christmas trees all got to do with it? So, I don't know. Bill O'Reilly, despite the fact he has a successful TV show, is not really that intelligent a man.
No, and I think he has an out and out agenda in terms of religion for it. Hey, Rick, we're gonna have to let you go just to get to the next topic, but thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm gonna have to let Bill know Rick said that.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'm gonna let you know, Bill. I know you're listening, buddy. I know you're doing your homework for the show tonight. You tune in. We set the agenda right here on Paleo Radio every Monday.
But that is a good point. I mean, when we look at it, separation of church and state and the war on Christmas, we have to acknowledge the fact that Christmas is, too, kind of a blending of pagan holidays and pagan traditions as well. We just didn't need to accept it. It'd be better that we all just say happy holidays and we hang out with each other and be happy hunky-dory. All right, guys, stick around. 95.3 FM.
That magic number, 616-656-1680. Be a freaking geek and call the show.
That's right.
Hey, we've got a caller we're going to get to right away, but you can't go anywhere. You have to wait because I have huge breaking news for you about Scott Baio.
Yes, and it's groundbreaking. Everyone has to know about it.
Groundbreaking news right here, exclusive to Paleo Radio.
But before we do, we're going to take Chuck's call here. Chuck, how are you doing?
Yes. Now, you denied that slang term Bogart was derived from Humphrey Bogart's name,
Well, no, we're just saying it has a more modern. It has a more modern.
Well, yeah, but it still relates to Humphrey Bogart.
Yes, it does.
Yeah,
yes.
I just want to be clear. It was still derived from his last name.
Yes, and is it because of his habits?
Yes,
or his habits that he chose over others?
Which, let's be fair, he did die of lung cancer, right?
Yes, he did.
Puff, puff, pass, Humphrey. Puff, puff, pass.
That's right. Follow the rules,
Yeah,
Humphrey.
follow the rules. Yeah.
That's great. Is there anything else you want to share with us, Chuck?
No, that was it for this morning.
That's a fantastic comment, though. I love it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye, Chuck. All right, as promised, breaking right here. We need that music. We need that breaking news music.
We
Joe.
will have to develop some
we have
dun,
to do
dun,
that.
dun breaking music.
Yeah, dun, dun, dun stuff. So, okay, Scott Baio allegedly assaulted. I saw this over at Perez Hilton, but I said, there's just something about this story that's kind of fishy. The Charles in Charge star filed a police report claiming that Mac, and he's talking here about an individual, I'm trying to remember who it was, the wife of some popular person, physically attacked him at a school event for their elementary school kiddos over their differing political views. It all went down Saturday in Thousand Oaks, California, when Nancy Mack, who's been very vocal anti-Trump person, started cursing out Baio for his support of the orange-tinted clown. TMZ learned Scott told cops that Smith's wife kept asking how he could support a man who said, grab them by the blank. Mr. Baio says the situation escalated to the point where Nancy attacked him by grabbing him under his arms and shaking and pushing him. And she said, of course, that that's how she was trying to demonstrate how Trump hugs people. Hugs women.
She's showing him how
I don't know.
Trump
she's just
hugs
showing
women.
She's showing him how. But see, here's the thing, Joe, and it struck me, and this is where people listening to this show get a glimpse into something that nobody else does. Scott Baio's been busted. This guy is totally busted, and I outed him on Twitter. I said, you faked an incident before. Rose and gold, ring any bells, Chachi. And the thing is, you got to go and you got to look up Rose and gold, and look it up, because there was a hardcore investigation on him by C.I. McCluskey into Rose and Gold, and it just kills me to see him back at this stuff. He's using a rubber nose.
Yeah, he's going back to the same stuff.
And he lied. He was tricking people on the news, and he tricked a bunch of kids at a circus. It was unbelievable. Can't believe he did it.
He lied to children at a circus?
And it's on video. You can go check it out. It's on video. China's in it. A whole bunch. It's crazy. You wouldn't even believe it.
What a dastardly
Wouldn't even believe it.
human.
You got to look up C.I. McCluskey and look up Scott Baio, and it's got video evidence there. You got to find it. It's great.
Yes.
But
Scott
you're busted,
Baio.
Scott.
You're busted, Scott. We know your dirty games, and come clean, right?
Now, what's up with this whole violent kids thing, Joe?
Well, we have some violent children here in America, JB. I didn't know if you knew that. But this is a New York Post article basically talking about children and screen time and how that can become an addiction.
Yeah.
The article is by Dr. Nicholas Kandaris. Kids turn violent as parents battle digital heroin addiction.
Yeah.
So that's quite a hefty claim there.
And he's the executive director of the Dunes East Hampton, one of the country's top rehabs. His book, Glow Kids, How Screen Addiction is Hijacking Our Kids and How to Break the Trance. It's St. Martin's Press. It's out now.
Yes. And he starts by saying his first exposure to screens in his first grade, he's talking about
Barbara McVeigh
and her husband exposed their children to the natural beauty near their home in Marin County, California. Boating, camping, adventuring the great outdoors. None of this stopped her 9-year-old son from falling down the digital rabbit hole. His first exposure to screens occurred in first grade at a highly regarded public school, named one of California's distinguished schools. When he was encouraged to play edgy games after class. Edgy games like educative video games. Yep. His contact with screens only increased during play dates where the majority of his friends played violent video games on huge monitors in their suburban homes. The results for Barbara's son were horrific. Her sweet boy, who had a big spirit and loved animals, now only wanted to play inside on a device.
Yeah. You know, if you read this, and even as you're reading it, Joe, it's making me... It's written as though it's talking about heroin. Mm-hmm. Like it's written literally, the tone of it, the sound of it, he had his first experience with heroin back in first grade kind of thing. And as I was reading, I was like, man, that sounds like it's a different tone that I've ever read for video games before. Yeah. Or not even video games. I keep saying that. It's not video games. It's
screen time.
Screen time.
It's adults. It's 50-year-old adults that can't put down their phone when they're eating lunch with people. I mean, I'm serious. It's they are in this group. The folks that literally have problems getting their face off a screen for more than 10 minutes.
I struggle with this, Joe.
I think we all do. And I've thought about it. I'm one of those guys that I don't let the kids play video games or do any screen time stuff during the weekdays. Mm-hmm. Only on Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday they have to shut off early. But I've just been kind of on those days because they don't get it during the week. It's just kind of one of those, free-for-alls where they spend hours and hours. And as I was reading this, and he was describing the agitation that these kids have, because with this situation, I'll let you finish telling the story, but man, he gets crazy. Yes,
and my
he does.
kids, as I was reading, I said, my kids haven't gotten there. Right.
Well, but
they haven't gotten there, but boy, they're stomping around.
A lot of that has to do with the preset rules, though, in the house, which is what we're talking about here, is that you can't have unregulated screen time, not just for your kids, but for yourself. This whole idea of the screen use is something that everybody's involved in. We're all doing it. So if parents say, "Hey, man, my kid with his nose to the screen for 4 hours out of every day, that's a serious problem. We need to stop that." We should be thinking about ourselves too, and the images that we're sending our kids when we're sitting at the computer for 4 hours staring at that screen. So anyways, going back to the story, her son became increasingly explosive if she didn't acquiesce to him playing the games. And then he got physical. It started with a push here, then a punch there. Frightened, she tried to take the device away, and that's when it happened. He beat the S out of me, she said.
Yeah.
He attacked.
And they said she made a mistake by using the device as a negotiation tool. So in this guy's opinion, the idea, and what he means by that, I guess, and I do this a lot, is I say, boy, you're acting really bad. You're supposed to be asleep by 9. It's 9:15. I guess you're not playing video games tomorrow. You're not going to get your device tomorrow. You can't watch TV tomorrow. And I use that as the bargaining tool. Or if you do this, then you can do that. And I thought about it. I said, I've never really even questioned whether or not that was a good idea.
Yeah.
I guess I've just never even processed and said, is that actually a good idea to use that particular thing as a bargaining tool?
Yeah. Well, I think in some cases it still would be no. I mean, I know in the article he disagrees, but in my own opinion, I would have to think that you make agreements and you say, look, if you play till 9 and then you shut it off, you can play tomorrow. And if you play till 9:05, you're not going to play tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But the person who wrote this article really doesn't agree with that stance. So anyways, going back to it, when she tried to take his computer away, he attacked her, quote, with a dazed look in his face. His eyes were not his. She called the police shocked, and they asked if the 9-year-old was on drugs. Now, this is where it gets a little intense. He said he was. The drugs weren't pharmaceutical. They were digital.
Yeah. Isn't that just cryptic?
It's very, very cryptic.
There wasn't. It was digital. But, the thing is, there's all this stuff. He says some readers felt the notion of comparing screens and video games to heroin was a huge exaggeration. I mean, we felt that way. As we're reading, it was
we kind of ho-hummed about it.
And he says he understands the initial response, but he's got a bunch of research, and that's where things get interesting, Joe. And I know we're running out of time for this segment, but boy, oh boy, we're going to come back and we're going to talk about this even more.
We are going to, because over 200 peer-reviewed studies correlate excessive screen usage with a whole host of clinical disorders, including addiction. Recent brain imaging research confirms that glowing screens affect the brain's frontal cortex, which controls executive functioning, including impulse control, in the exact same way that drugs like cocaine and heroin do. Yeah. Thanks to research from the U.S. military, we also know that screens and video games can literally affect the brain like digital morphine, which we know that happens too, because when people are, they're doing their whole ... It's just the little shots of dopamine from getting a little teeny like, so they're constantly refreshing the Facebook page, constantly refreshing the Twitter page. We see it a lot.
We're going to be back after this, folks, talking more about this issue. You're not going to want to go anywhere. 616-656-1680 for more Paleo Radio, broadcasting out of Grand Rapids, Michigan.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
Thank you for staying tuned to Paleo Radio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. JB, I want to bring something to your attention, something that you know, and all the fans of Paleo Radio, that one of our heroes, John Glenn, passed away.
It's totally true. I saw a piece you shared of CNSnews.com, Columbus, Ohio, AP. The nation's vice president and a retired Marine Corps general were among the dignitaries, and in fact thousands of people, and family members and other mourners who choked up Saturday during a memorial tribute to the late space hero John Glenn. Roughly 2,500 people gathered at Mershon Auditorium on the Ohio State University campus for a celebration of life, and I like that.
Yes, I like that
too. A celebration of his life. And by the sound of it, he was a happy and optimistic, likable, approachable human being. He
always was. Yeah. He was always a very, very nice man, a humble man. Vice President Joe Biden said, I think John defined what it meant to be an American, what we were about, just by how he acted. It was always about promise. We were a country of possibility, opportunity, always a belief in tomorrow. Which I think encapsulates John Glenn and what he did. First First American man to orbit the entire Earth. I mean, that's a pretty cool thing.
He died on December 8th at age 95. He was the first American to orbit the Earth in 1962. And then in 1998, he became the oldest person in space at age 77. And, I learned, Joe, he was married for, 75 years?
Yeah.
That's
Something
ridiculous.
Crazy. Yeah, he was
That's
married since he was 20 years
That's
old.
amazing. And and people were saying that they had known him for so long that they in fact knew that whole marriage of 75 years with that woman.
Yeah.
With his wife. And so just our hearts go out, condolences to the family there of John Glenn, an American hero. So we're talking, Joe, about this whole violent kid thing, and it's getting crazy.
That's
talking
right.
Digital morphine.
So we're talking kids
digital
turning
heroin.
violent, screen love, the children falling into it. So we're continuing it where there was a 9-year-old boy. They're in California. They introduced to the outdoors, but he started doing educational games at school and playing violent video games with his friends. When his mother takes away the device, he went completely crazy.
Yeah, he beat her up.
So it said the results for Barbara's son were horrific. The sweet boy who had a big spirit and loved animals now only wants to play inside on his device, like we were talking about.
Yeah.
She says he would refuse to do anything unless I would let him play his game. She discarded her TV 25 years ago, and she made the mistake of using the game as a bargaining tool,
Right.
which is what you were talking about earlier on.
And that's the thing, allowing them to be on it so much, right? And saying, man, it's a different thing than the TV. It's not the same. I'm going to get rid of the TV, but I'm going to keep this other visual medium. And I'll tell you, we mention pretty regularly, a guy by the name of Neil Postman. And we love Neil Postman. He's a great media theorist, media ecologist, in fact. And he mentions in his book, How to Watch TV News, he talks about this very issue, and he talks about limiting time and the need to have that discussion on the amount of time because of tests that were done. And I wish I had it off the top of my head, but I thought it had to do with ants, and that placing them in front of giving ants screen time, that they end up fighting each other. They get violent. Ants do.
Really?
And he was talking about this in his book, but this is an older book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're looking and you're saying, well, how is it advanced? And in this article here, he talks about the 200 clinical trials, including ones of a video game called Snow World.
Yeah. Which one thing I would have to ask though, that and maybe this isn't causation but correlation, is how do you explain the lack of violence in our society, where our society is becoming less violent with the increase of the screen time? Because those are inversely proportional.
Yeah.
Our homicide rates are down, but our screen time is through the roof.
I'd like to know, I'd like him to break it down and see internals on this regarding what kind of violence is being talked about. Because, Steven Pinker, for example, he's another guy we reference.
Yeah.
He has a book, I think it's Angels of Our Better Nature or something like that. And he talks about how we've gotten better over time, less violent, in fact. That we've gotten more kind and empathetic, and you have less of these violent outbursts, including war even. I mean, death with war and other things that if you look and put it in perspective in history, that it's not as bad. So what kind of aggression is he talking about? Is it more of the day-to-day, which I'm assuming that might be what he's saying?
I think it's kind of like the docile cow in the field type of aggressiveness, where the cow just hangs, does its own thing, but then if you interfere with anything nearby it can get violent, which is that way. Like, I kind of wonder about the automation of the human mind in this sense. And I know that's kind of a grand way of saying it, but truly, people are so hooked in where we're all connected, but we're all extremely disconnected in the same way, where most people feel like they want to be connected emotionally to something, and they aren't finding it, but at the same time talking to more people than they've talked to on a daily basis. So it's an interesting thing. But going back into the article, I interviewed Lieutenant Sam Brown, one of the pilot participants in the research, who had been injured by an IED in Afghanistan and who had sustained life-threatening third-degree burns over 30% of his body. When I asked him about his experience using video games for pain management, he said, "I was a little bit skeptical, but honestly, I was willing to try anything." When asked what it felt like compared to his morphine treatments, he said, "I was sure feeling less pain than I was with the morphine." So when he's playing video games to relieve pain, he said he was feeling less pain than he was with morphine.
In a controlled setting.
In a controlled setting. Granted, yes.
Right. And the Navy head of addiction research, Dr. Andrew Doan, calls screen digital pharmakeia, Greek for pharmaceuticals, a term he coined to explain the neurobiological effects produced by video technologies.
Yes, which we knew that with TV. Remember back in the day, people started calling it the idiot box, right? Where they're like, these people are they're spending exorbitant amounts of time watching nonsense. And that's that is on full blast now. Media's gotten faster, it's gotten more condensed, but sure enough, boy, do we look at a lot of bull crap.
And this is a reasonable question, and he brings it up. He says, while this is a wonderful advance in pain management medicine, it begs the question, just what effect is this digital drug, a narcotic more powerful than morphine, having on the brains and nervous systems of 7-year-olds addicted to the glowing screens? And I've seen some of these kids. I mean,
absolutely.
I've seen them. They're drones and robots and zombies walking around.
And
I've seen them.
I was a crazy video game playing kid when I was younger. I played a lot of games. Now, I was very lucky where I grew up in a small rural community where I didn't have internet access, so the idea of playing online games until my fingers bled was just not even an option. I played some games. It was relegated to how much time I could play, and my parents oftentimes would make me go outside, right? But even then, I would think in my youth I played too much video games. I had too much screen time. And I'm just really lucky that I had an outdoor escape that I could go to. Where most kids, if they're in the inner cities or they're in areas where you don't have other options, maybe a lot of what they think is, what do you do other than play video games? What else do I do, right?
Well, and it's so easy for children to fall into that. I mean, you can, for example, in our home, all week long, the kids are playing stuffed animals. They're using imagination. They're playing school or family or doctor or whatever they want to do. And they're playing all these different games and Pokemon cards. But then when the weekend comes and they start getting some screen time, if you take that from them, their immediate response, I mean, within 5 minutes, it is, I'd bet the farm every time, and I'd be a millionaire. They're going to come down and they're going to say, well, there's nothing to do. Mm-hmm. I don't know what to do now. I'm so bored now at home.
What can I do?
What can I do? There's just nothing. And then they stomp up the stairs, and you're thinking, we live on Earth, man.
Yes.
This is a huge planet. It is a big universe. There are tons of different things that you can do.
Yes.
And the idea that you can't play the escapist
yes.
with your stylus, it's all over.
It's all over.
It's
There's
done.
nothing we can do.
It's done. My life is just a waste.
In the article, he brings up another great point. If screens are indeed digital drugs, then schools have become drug dealers. Mm-hmm. Under misguided notions that they're educational, the entire classroom landscape has been transformed over the past 10 years into a digital playground that includes Chromebooks, iPads, smartboards, tablets, smartphones, learning apps, and the never-ending variety of edu-games.
A bunch of little junkies and their drug dealer teachers.
A bunch of little junkies, Ro.
We got a phone caller.
We do, but we're going to have to get to him after the break. This is someone that we know and love, Stan 44. Please stick around. You are a great, loving member of the show, and we care about you greatly.
616-656-1680. We are done with the first hour of the program.
Yes. After this, we're going to be kicking into Rio. We're going to be talking about all sorts of different topics. You guys do not want to miss around. North Carolina power grab, a topic about overweight kids and how we can deal with them, and people that are in the LGBTQ community, how we can support them. Stick around, guys. There's plenty of Paleo Radio after this.
You've been listening to Paleo Radio, exclusively with Secular Media Group. It's time for Paleo Radio, only on Secular Media Network.
You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Thank you for waiting that literal 10 seconds for us to go and do our station identification. We're going to jump right into it with our caller, Stan 44. How are you doing, Stan?
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, good morning to you.
I just caught again the tail end. I had to do some things, but I was just listening to your conversation about addictions. I think that you guys touched on it toward the end. I mean, you start out with the computers or iPads, iPods, and all these, but it's all the same thing. It's an addictive. We've had this quality, I guess you'd call it, in humankind for forever. You know, it's just how do you deal with it? I think the magic word is diversity for kids, and parents have to, realize that kids are inquisitive, and when they develop habits, when I was a kid, I used to love comic books, and television, and later on it gets some kids get into exercise. They want to go out and play basketball all day long, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what the addiction is. It's just how do you balance it with your whole life. I think that's the key.
All in moderation, as Willie Nelson says, right?
Right. I mean, the whole world's out there. Right, yeah. But the thing is, though, you have to understand that you're finding out because, the other side of that is, though, how do you become an expert in something? And some kids, they kind of realize what they want to do for the rest of their lives, and then they kind of, channel into that. So you don't want to kind of, make them, scared to learn anything, but to learn everything. And then later on, as you get older, you kind of focus in on what you really want to do. But taste it all. When you go to a buffet of experiences, try a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then I'll tell you one thing that did that for me, believe it or not, and you guys know me, but believe it or not, I used to be a Cub Scout.
Oh, really?
A Boy Scout.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah, and believe it or not, that really exposed me to a lot of things that weren't urban. Okay, we went out in the nature, and we did things, and as a group, and it was a diverse group, and I started seeing things that weren't right around me, and I started understanding the world is a little different than what I see when I look out my bedroom window,
Yes.
So that's just my thought on it.
Yeah.
No, that's a great point.
So much.
It's actually a pretty good thing to end on there with that topic. The one thing I wanted to add that I think is great is my mother does this when we all come in for a family. I'm in a very big family. I'm the youngest and only boy of 3 older sisters. We all get together at the table, and my mom has a basket that sits at the table, and you shut your phone off and put it in that basket, and they set it aside. And when we sit at the table, there are no electronics, period. And it's only for a half hour of the time when we're hanging out, but we still maintain our family time. I think it's extremely important, especially when you come home for the holidays. You don't see each other very often. It's a good idea to do.
You remember this popular show back in the, 80s, 70s, whatever, called The Waltons?
Oh yeah,
man,
of course,
you better
man.
believe it, man. I grew up. Listen,
you remember how they used to, at the end of the show all the time, they'd all sit at the table and they'd talk about their experiences and stuff. And
they'd say goodnight to each other.
They'd say goodnight.
And wow, so that introduces the family conversation and where you share experiences and stuff like that. So it's just, you have to watch out. I hate to say it though, I think that any time a parent allows a child to focus on one singular thing and look at them and say, well, they're happy, so let them do it, I think that's a little laziness. So I think you have to, it takes the parent to kind of introduce new stuff to kids and say, okay, try this a little bit, try that a little bit. Because if you do, I think kids will latch on to different things and they want new experiences. And they just, it's up to parents to kind of allow them to taste a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
That's a great point, Stan. Thank
you. All right,
I'll
let it go.
Yeah, thank you, Stan. We appreciate it.
I'll tell you, Joe, I am so happy he brought up the Waltons.
Yes.
And growing up, man, we watched a lot of TV. I was like you, played a lot of video games. When Nintendo came out, my parents bought me that. I had Duck Hunt and Super Mario Brother, and I think eventually Contra and Punch-Out and other games like that. But whenever I would get in trouble, and I'm not saying this is necessarily the best idea in the world, but whenever I'd get in trouble, apart from having to read the Bible, that was one of the things I used to have to do. Another thing, that's interesting too, but another thing was I'd have to watch the Waltons. And I'd have to watch Little House or Andy Griffith Show. I'd have to sit down with the family, and I would have to watch that, and that was my punishment, is watching something where there was a family cohesion. And so,
interesting.
Growing up, and to this day, I love all 3 of those shows. Part of that's probably my dad. He's still, he's like 40. He's like 40 years old, and he watches the Andy Griffith Show every night when he goes to bed. He still does it. When I was with him in Palm Springs, is what he was doing. And it's just but getting back and I guess final thoughts, just wrapping everything up with the whole kid junkie digital heroin thing. Is a question for Michigan. In the article they said, is there medically sound health guidelines in place for children in front of a computer or screen every day? Even the respected AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, has just this month modified their screen recommendations, suggesting more tech-cautious guidelines. Children younger than 18 months, no digital media. Ages 2 to 5, no more than 1 hour daily to be co-viewed with parents. And, I think this is maybe extreme, but it's interesting. It's debatable. The very final thing, he says, I believe that kids below the age of 10 should have no interaction with interactive screens, iPads, smartphones, Xbox. There should be warning labels on such interactive screens that read, quote, excessive screen usage by children may lead to clinical disorders.
Yeah.
Debate it. 616-656-1680 is 1680. We'd love to hear from you. 616-656-1680.
Yes. So interesting topics, interesting things all around.
And now fat stuff.
And now we've got another one,
Yes.
which is, forgive me, GLSEN?
Yes, glisten.
Glisten.
Yes.
Glisten. There you go. I was going to say, why am I not putting that together? Glisten. Okay.
Yes. It's the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network. Pronounced Glisten.
Glisten.
National Student Council.
Glisten.org has an article, 5 Ways Schools Can Support Fat, Disabled, LGBTQ Students. A very interesting one. It's who wrote this here?
Caress Wiedner.
Thank you. I'm looking for the name. Caress Wiedner.
Yeah.
Nice. She writes, I'm currently in high school, and I've been fat since I was 8 years old. Being fat is really all I can remember. I've also had multiple disabilities and identify as both queer and transgender. Like all students, I live at the intersection of multiple identities. This International Day of Persons with Disabilities, I'm sharing ways that schools can support all students, especially those who are fat, disabled, and LGBTQ, whose needs are often ignored. So there's a list of some things. I don't know if you and I are going to agree on all of these.
I don't know. We haven't really
everybody.
talked about it, or with everybody. And I got to say this. I found this from YouTuber Blair White at Ms. Blair, B-L-A-I-R-E, White, W-H-I-T-E, Miss Blair White, and it said, make trannies great again, apparently. It's part of the bio. And the tweet said, the world owes you nothing just because you're fat or gay. Why are they being grouped in with disabled people? And so I don't entirely agree. After I read this, I'm like, wow, that's pretty aggressive, abrasive.
So maybe somewhere in the middle we can meet, right?
Maybe somewhere in the middle. So, but there's 5 things, Joe, right?
Yeah, there's 5. The first one is re-educate students about what it means to be fat. Many people who are overweight have underlying medical issues and mental illnesses that cause them to be overweight. People think they're overweight because we ate wrong or we didn't take care of ourselves properly, and they ignore these underlying issues. So that's a good point. She brings up that she has polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is known to cause weight gain. Other medical issues like ovarian cancers, thyroid issues, and Cushing's syndrome also cause people to gain weight. I also suffer from an eating disorder called EDNOS, which is eating disorder not otherwise specified because it doesn't match criteria for anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating disorders.
And
now,
she says, yeah, go ahead.
This is one thing, though, too. And I think this is an important thing when we get into semantics, that eating disorder not otherwise specified may be just moderately overeating.
Yeah.
And that we need to call it that. That it is not an identifiable disorder, and we don't need to make an acronym for something that's not an identifiable disorder. We need to say what the behaviors are and look for behavior improvements. Because there is also something to this too, and I know that I'm treading a very fine line when I say this, but it's why we brought this topic into the concern. That when people bring up disorders, a lot of disorders are brought up with the assumption of I can't do anything about it. I have this disorder. And when they say I have the disorder, that's supposed to be the stop of the conversation where you say, oh, I can't push or ask of anything further past this. My interpretation is that barely anyone on this earth that walks this earth with 2 feet and has 2 hands, does their whole thing, any person, they walk around with different disorders than others. Very few of them have none. And we all handle our burdens in separate ways. And I think it's important that we have to abolish the idea of if I have a disorder, it inhibits me from improvement in that area.
I'm bipolar.
I think that needs to be shucked from the discourse.
I'm bipolar, and I have anxiety disorder, and I host with you a live radio program on a public show. And on my wrist, and people have seen it in pictures on my Facebook page, but on my wrist I have a wristband that says support our veterans, and it has a number, 800-273-8255, press 1. And that is a Veterans Crisis Line support number. And I've called it many times. In fact, I've made a video about it, talking about the different reasons I've had for it. Mm-hmm. I've communicated with my wife over the years to build a relationship of trust where she can observe and see how I'm behaving, and if she recognizes certain things, she can point it out. I build a good relationship with my psychologist and psychiatrist at the VA and talk to them. I keep aware of things. I notice, am I not showering for a couple days? Am I manic? Am I depressed? What's going on with me? Mm-hmm. And I try to keep aware of these things because that's something I live with.
Yes.
And you have to. And I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I'm just bipolar. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to act and behave just any which way. And anytime someone criticizes me or says you shouldn't do this, that I just simply say I'm bipolar. Deal with it.
Yes, and you know what? And I think that a lot of people that struggle with these feelings, I don't think a lot of those people are. I don't believe that a huge swath of people that have disorders are in that group. But I do think it's something that's worth noting that there are a few folks, and I think we know them in our everyday lives, of people that will say, yes, I have this disorder, and because I have this disorder, I'm allowed to act out in ways that you are not. And that's something that I have a harder time with. Now, this is one that I think is a great thing about mentioning with the being overweight and re-educating students. She says, in school, we're simply taught that diet and exercise will keep you from being fat and that being fat is inherently bad and unhealthy. This means that being a fat person in a health class feels like a constant attack during the entire nutrition unit. We need to re-educate people about what being fat means and remind folks about the underlying medical issues and mental illnesses that are related with weight gain. And I think that's true. I think that there are reasons, like, for instance, if you have PCOS, you are going to gain weight in a different way. A diet and exercise aren't going to be the only thing that's going to stave off weight gain for you. You're going to have to do some other things. That I do believe that that's an important thing. So as you guys can tell, as we're talking about this, we're walking a fine line. There's a dance. Too far one way or too far the other way gets you into some troubled waters.
And she said a fat, non-binary trans person has it worst off. She's a believer in the intersectionality theory of feminism. But talking about how it's worse off and how you need to be inclusive, talking about your GSA. That's her point number 2. Make sure your GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, is truly inclusive for fat, non-binary trans people.
Yes.
Things like that. And I mean, hey, there's no problem with that. You should be inclusive regardless of whether or not, however a person may be shaped.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
it's a good
I
idea.
used to say I'm out of shape. I'm not. I'm just in a really interesting one.
Yeah.
You know, and so they should simply not judge people and be inclusive of people regardless of how they're shaped.
Yes, and that's obviously something that we want to support.
Sure.
Another item is intervene in name-calling and bullying of all students, including fat and disabled students. I think that everyone agrees with that. That's not an issue.
But some of the stuff she said was interesting. She says language that harms fat people is commonplace in society and especially at school. And here are some examples. I better watch my diet. I don't want to get fat before the summer.
Yeah.
You'd be so pretty if you just lose a little weight. I can see that as a backhand. But at the same time, I can see that as possibly being true. We see that a lot of times where someone who is hyper obese, right? And that person goes on a show and loses a whole bunch of weight, and you see the person, you say, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. That's something people see. They can turn on the TV and they can see makeovers and transformations like that.
And you have to be proud of the people that made those transformations.
You have
and
to
you
be
can't
proud of
downplay. You can't downplay the effort and the enormous effort and time and dedication it took to reach that goal. Which is the thing is, I think that in some cases, people that are still overweight that see someone lose that weight say, look at what society says about us. But in a way, people are congratulating the dedication and the hard work of that person, and it would be wrong to take it away from them for having lost that weight and putting in such an effort. I really do. Again, make sure your GSA is truly inclusive, the Gay Straight Alliance. Teach students to love themselves, their bodies, and one another. It's easy to find articles on childhood obesity, nutrition, and fitness regimens for fat children, often as young as 8 or 9 years old. There's always some article on fat kids getting bullied and how to help them. You guessed it, another diet. But rarely there's an article that teaches young people to love themselves and not to harass their peers, which we could all benefit from.
The internet's filled with it. The internet is filled with articles about young people loving themselves.
The article is there are bubbles from the water that you drown from with how many articles talk about self-love and how everyone's a special snowflake. I mean, those articles are a dime a dozen.
Well, and that's kind of the debate. I mean, what does all of that mean exactly? You know, for people to love themselves and not to harass their peers. How shall we then speak? You know, I mean, like, that's at the core of this debate. And yet at the same time, you say, man, there is no lack of of people, of articles written on how to love yourself or why not to bully. I mean, those things. Go and put up a hashtag on Stop Bullying on Facebook and find out how many tens of thousands of people or hundreds of thousands are using it. I mean, it's massive. I mean, that's trending. They're just in a constant state of trend. I mean, that's the case. And so I don't know. I'm not entirely with her on that one.
Yes. No. Yeah. And then the very last one is include positive depictions of fat, disabled, and LGBTQ people in the classroom. When non-binary people, that's people that don't identify as male or female, are depicted at all, they're typically stick-thin figures in ambiguous hairstyles. Teachers can help change this by including people with diverse body sizes, abilities, sexual orientations. I think in sex ed class, that's a great idea. I think in everyday class,
Radio?
questionable.
Join the club.
Join
Support
us.
our work by visiting patreon.com/PaleoRadio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
That's right. Breathing fire. Destroying fake news left and right, Joe.
That's right. Burning it down.
Right here at Paleo Radio. And listen, speaking of fake news, looking for love? Put on a cat sweater. It's over at the New York Times.
Yes.
Totally a fake news piece, 100%, no doubt. Says, for those searching for a soulmate, the how-to website WikiHow. I mean, you already know. I mean, come on. WikiHow offers an 11-step plan that could be of help. It tells the love-torn about fruitful places to look for a mate and instructs them to do things such as make a list of the traits sought in a partner and to start looking. But here at the New York Times, we have a better plan, and ours has only 2 steps. Number 1, put on a sweater emblazoned with a cat wearing a Santa hat on the front. Any kind of cat, really. Calico, Siamese, that's how I know it's fake. Stand next to an elevator. That's point number 2. It wouldn't hurt to put some perfume or cologne on. This plan needs all the help it can get. And then apparently, boom, Mr. or Mrs. Right will just pop up, you know. So, you know, they say they can't swear by it because the data is admittedly scant. But in 2 wedding stories published in the Times this year, Santa hat wearing cat sweaters have led to love. And in 3 others, sightings in elevators led to marriages. Again, 100% fake news from the New York Times.
So wait by an elevator with a cat on your sweatshirt and you will find love.
You should try this because a couple stories that we picked out of a million bazillion stories out of the year turned out this way.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
We streamed the evidence and found 2 people that found love this way, so hey, give it a shot. Hey, and if you do Paleocrats, take a picture of you standing by an elevator with a cat shirt on, and we will send you a Paleo Radio t-shirt.
If you have a story of finding love wearing a cat sweater, we would absolutely love to talk to you, 616-656-1680. And in fact, I should bring this up. We should throw this out there just as a question. We should have done it earlier in the day because it's getting late into the show. But we'd like to know this is the honor system here. We're trusting that you're not going to go to the Google gods up in the cloud and figure this out. But what is the most dangerous animal in the United States? What animal kills more?
Yeah, we'll answer after we get to the next break. But what animal do you think in the U.S. kills the most? It's an interesting topic. It's something that would kind of blow your mind. Not what you think.
Not what you think. If you want to give that a shot, 616-656-1680. But Joe, before we move on to the Rio thing, I just wanted to say something about this article about the LGBTQ and fat and disabled. That very last point, include positive depictions of fat, disabled, and LGBTQ people in the classroom, okay? She says when non-binary people are depicted at all, they're typically stick-thin figures in ambiguous hairstyles, wearing suits or non-dress shirts or punk fashion. It's almost impossible to find a positive depiction of a fat, non-binary person. And I was wondering, what about Glee?
Yeah.
What about Glee? You know, what about Pink Flamingos or Beautiful Laundrette? I mean, I don't know if those were non-binaries, but I mean, you're talking about people who aren't necessarily the most attractive people in the world. They're definitely not modeling runways, and yet they were significant. So, I don't know. I think that It's a mishmash, and I encourage people to go check it out.
Yep, and I do think that there is something to having people in more than in the classroom. And I know that a lot of people will say I'm using the star power thing here, but more than in the classroom, it would be important to have people on our everyday TV shows that are LGBTQ, like we have been. Especially you look at the movement with gay people and what happened with Ellen, and Ellen normalizing it. Will and Grace normalizes it, makes it so people actually understand that people are gay. It's okay to be in public, and it's out that way. And when it's on our television, a lot of people get their news and their information from the television. So what is normalized on TV gets normalized in their world. So I can see a serious push for that to make that happen. That would be a positive thing. And
I don't think that it's just thinking back. I mean, thinking of TV shows, I can see in my mind even just fat people that are on TV, that are popular, lovable characters. Not as many.
Usually men. But
usually men, true. Usually men. But normally lovable characters, for the most part, except for the fat guy who died in 7. But, we'll never know if that guy was actually charming. He died suffocating on tomato soup.
Yeah, it was really fast.
Yeah, really fat, really sad story. Mm-hmm. Okay, Rio hoped for a post-Olympics boom. Instead, it's still mired in crisis. By Dom Phillips over at the Washington Post. 3 months after its successful staging of the Summer Olympics, Brazil's cultural hub should be riding high. Instead, it is a financial, political, crime-ridden mess. And it's weird because we mentioned before, I think in last week's episode, and I encourage people to go check it out, Spreaker.com/PaleoRadioShow. All of our stuff is there. But we talked about John Oliver and how he did a segment on this and what happens, this is a while ago, before the Olympics, and saying what happens to cities when they have the Olympics show up. I mean, everybody likes to say, yay, look at this, man, look at this beautiful facility, all these people, and the host town loves it for a minute, but then it's done. Well, but this is bigger than that. And way bigger.
Yes, this is way bigger, especially because if we remember and we recall correctly in Rio, most people that were there did not want the Rio Olympics to happen. Most of the people that were there were upset because their president had just been removed and there was an interim president because of scandal. Right at the time of the Olympics, they're investing $6 billion into it that they didn't want. Actually, it might be way higher than that. But they were investing billions of dollars into it that the people of Rio were not happy with. And they were citing the historical analysis of what the Olympics is and what the Olympics does, which is show up at an area, build a bunch of stadiums, tell them that those stadiums are going to create some sort of financial stability for them, and then walk away and those stadiums fall flat on their face. The same situation.
The Rio de Janeiro state government is broke, struggling to pay salaries. On Tuesday, riot police fired tear gas, rubber bullets, and percussion grenades at public sector workers. What is a percussion grenade, Joe?
Those are flashbangs is what they call them. They disorient you. They flash, and they also, when they make that long sound, it can affect your ears. It affects your vertigo, knocks people loopy a little bit.
Wow. So rubber bullets and percussion grenades at public sector workers protesting a proposed austerity package. Among the protesters, police, firefighters, and teachers. Some of the protesters hurled rocks and fireworks back at the riot police. 2 former governors were arrested, one accused of vote buying, the other of running a vast corruption ring. We're talking investigating billions of dollars.
Huge money.
Billions in state tax exemptions, right? And, of course, they benefit luxury jewelers, let's see here, construction companies, and even brothels.
Yeah,
That's
even brothels.
Yeah.
The violent crime continues to surge, along with allegations of execution-style mass killings by overtaxed police.
Yeah.
So it's rough. Rather than the bright post-Olympic future that were promised, many Caracas or Rio citizens are known. Rio citizens are known, fear the city is doubling down on the chaos and corruption of its past. Quote, "It's in the worst condition in 20 years," said Ignacio Canio, a professor of sociology at the State University of Rio de Janeiro. "You have an economic crisis, a political crisis, a moral crisis. There's a general perception of a very dark time." Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah, and these are financial problems. I listed some of these out, and these are at the core of the state's difficulties. It says in June, just weeks before the Olympics, officials declared a state of fiscal public calamity. There's a fall in petroleum prices. They're faced with a $5 billion deficit and a government that has more retired than active employees. Vote buying scheme that I already mentioned. Business brothers pocketing $66 billion in bribes on state contracts. I'm
crazy
not sure about
money.
that. Don't quote me on it. And then during Cabral's tenure, he spent millions on a luxury boat, art, fine jewelry, and they discovered that Cabral gave billions in tax exemptions to companies. All of these things, all at the same time, all following, and all leading up, in fact. It's not even following, it's leading up. I mean, this is the context surrounding everything.
That's right.
And now it's just it's explosive down there.
Yes.
At this point. And it's just not, I don't think this is covered sufficiently. And we said it last week, in fact. We said in America that there is an underreported South. And is it Al Jazeera that uses that as their slogan? Yeah, it's Al Jazeera saying that they cover the unreported South.
The unreported South.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Al Jazeera. And
it
so
is.
It's true, and we were going to bring it up and last week, and we ran out of time. We literally suffer from the exact same problem, so we wanted to make sure that we brought it to people's attention here. You can go check it out to learn more. Dom Phillips, Washington Post. The article is Rio hoped for a post-Olympics boom. Instead, it is still mired in crisis.
Yep. And we have a caller, Jim, on the line. Jim, how are you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Not too bad. We hear you're calling from Alaska, huh?
Well, Alaska, south of Grand Rapids.
That's, no, don't keep it for me, man. I was trying to make it a big thing. No, that's okay.
Okay.
That's fine, Jim.
It's Monday, Joe. I'm not quick enough today.
No problems. How are you doing, sir?
Good.
What did you want to share with us?
Well, if you guys promise not to tell any of my family this answer, my personal experience is that the most dangerous animal in America are pet dogs.
I don't want to give away the answer. I will say you are in the top 3.
Yes,
you did nail one that's in the top 3, which is pretty good because it's kind of a surprising group. So yes, dogs are in the higher one, but they are not number 1. But that's a great guess. Yes,
I've been running and walking on roads for 40 years, and I've been bitten twice, knocked down several times, and pinned still.
Yeah.
And I don't see any hope of it getting better because neither the owners or the authorities really much care.
No. And people don't. The truth is, my opinion is most people shouldn't be animal owners. They think that they are capable and they are not.
Well, their dogs don't bite.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, their dogs don't bite.
Their dog is incapable of acting like a dog.
Right.
Yes, of course. That's a great guess, though, Jim. And, hey, again, I think it's number 2. I'll double-check, but I think you just hit our number 2 on the list.
I'm surprised that it's not number 1.
But
hey,
there
thank
is
you
indeed
so
one
much.
more, but thank you for the call.
Yes, and if you would like to join the discussion on this and give a shot at what is the most lethal, the most deadly animal in the United States, and it's kind of almost a trick question to some people.
It blew me. It did surprise me.
It blew me away a little bit. I had to do a little bit of research, but we'll give the answer. If no one gives the answer, if no one calls the program and gives the answer before the end, we'll make sure to do that. The number is 616-656-1680.
Yeah. So going back into this article, faced with $5 billion in a deficit in a government that has more retired than active employees, like you said, JB, they're pushing austerity measures that include cutting official spending and increasing employees' pension contributions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking major deficits, major cuts, and while this all happened, they rolled the Olympics into town. They were able to afford the Olympics.
Yeah.
The employees say corruption and mismanagement caused the crisis, and they've been protesting vociferously outside Rio's state parliament as the debate is a package of evils, they say.
Yeah.
Jason Carnero, professor of administrative law and management at Rio's IBMEC business school, blames the problems on the way Rio has always been run. The system, he says, is based on cozy ties amongst business leaders, politicians, and government officials, rewarding corruption and breeding inefficiency. So crony capitalism.
Crony capitalism is going on down there, and we're having huge problems. Make sure to go check out that article. It's fascinating. It's over at the Washington Post. I need to remind people, actually, one of our listeners, Diane Baum, she reached out to us and informed me yesterday that she listened to the show at 10 to 12.
At 10 to 12?
At 10 to 12 yesterday.
Nice.
In the morning and at night. And so people, if you're tuning in right now or if you're listening via podcast, you can tune in at WPR, publicrealityradio.org. You can hear us 95.3, 1680 AM, any of the ways that you can hear us with this station. We're not only here 10 to noon on Mondays live, but we're also replayed 10 to midnight on Monday night, and then 10 to noon and 10 to Monday, or 10 to midnight again on Sunday.
So you guys can get a ton of Paleo Radio. We love that we have a better open time. James calling from Kentwood, please stick around for the commercial break. We'll get to you just after we roll in again. Stick around, folks. We'll be talking about North Carolina Republicans and how they have pushed austerity measures and pushed away powers from the Democratic Party before leaving office.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Thank you so much, Nathan, for that introduction back to the show. I'm really sorry that your beer judging career is on the ropes. Apparently. I love him. I tweeted it out. I had to. I just had to. It was screaming at me. There was an article that said that just people attending a beer competition and wine tasting competition, that they are as good, on average, as people who actually go through and take all of the tests.
I totally believe that.
And hey, I can tell you firsthand, I helped Nathan. I actually, he would have me read the different kinds of beer, and he would then say what they were, what was in it. He had this big folder. He went through all this stuff. And so I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think about that? And it was in the context, though. I saw a video, and I encourage everybody to go see it if you really want to get in the Christmas spirit. It's a song. It's an original by, it's a cover by Ross Patterson, and it's called Super Drunk Silent Night. If you want you and the kids to get in the Christmas spirit, make sure to go check that out. It's a brilliantly hilarious video.
Yeah.
And he sings every single verse, too. And it's longer than you think. And he's super drunk, and it's a great Christmas classic for the whole family.
And we will certainly share that on our Facebook page. You guys can check it out, facebook.com/Paleo Radio. We're going to have James on the line. How you doing, James?
Hey, good. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Thank you for waiting around. We appreciate it.
No problem there.
Yeah. What do you have for us?
I think your dangerous animal is what would be described as an orange weasel.
An orange weasel. Good guess.
Like Donald Trump.
Like a sharp-toothed weasel?
I think after he's done with his reign, he's going to say a few offensive things to other countries, and a few journalists will get their heads chopped off or make Putin mad.
Yeah.
But the more domestic answer or a more animalized answer, I think, is maybe, and I didn't look anything up, but I'm just thinking a horse.
A horse isn't a bad one. Yeah, we'll have to look at, but a horse is not in the top three, but that's not a bad guess.
That's a good guess, man.
Domestic
what
animals
about
are a good one.
Can we?
We'll give you another chance.
Would it be a southern animal, like a snake or a gator or something, or is it something you can find pretty much anywhere in the country?
It's something you can find pretty much anywhere in the country, but snakes and alligators do breach the top 10.
Oh, okay.
So, Yep.
All right, well, I'm glad you guys are on Mondays.
Yeah, we are too, yeah.
You guys are awesome, and I'm glad the Paleo Radio got off. Are you rerunning on the weekend? Or
we're rerunning from 10 to noon on Sundays, and then again 10 to midnight on Sundays, and 10 to midnight on Mondays. So we're saturating this network now 8 hours a week.
All right, well... Tune in to Cut to the Chase whenever you can.
Exactly. Yeah. I was just going to say, this is for people who don't recognize the voice. This is the great Jim Chase who's calling in, the host of Cut to the Chase. So, yeah.
I got a little cold going, so I do sound a little different.
Oh, no, I knew it was you from the word go. It said James on the paper, but once I heard your voice, I said, oh, that's Jim. I know who that is.
Anyway, I'm glad you guys are on. You guys got a good energy and everything, and you need to be during the week also. I mean, the middle of the night is great, too, when you really over-concentrate, or when people do, a little bit of deep thinking. But this wakes you up during the day, so I'm glad to find you guys, and hopefully this is a solid home for you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, all right, you guys.
It does set us apart a little bit, Joe, that we do this. Not only can people hear us for 8 hours a week, but we're live for 2, and we're live during 10 to 12 Eastern Standard Time in Grand Rapids. We have our competition at that time is Glenn Beck.
Yes, Glenn Beck.
And so if you are not satisfied with Glenn Beck, right, and if you want a local flavor, someone here in town, and you like what you hear, make sure to tune in. Make sure to find us at patreon.com/PaleoRadio to learn how you can support the show, to make sure that this show keeps kicking, because we want to do this with all of our might and all of our intelligence and happiness and emotions. We want to do this for the rest of our lives.
Well,
we love what we do here.
And you guys will be seeing more of us. We definitely, like we said, we know who our competition is. We know who we're trying to level up to, and we need your guys' help to do it. But also, we plan on being here. We plan on moving around. We plan on being visible in the Grand Rapids community, being a part of different events and goings-on that's going on downtown. So we will be an entity that's here. Join up, become a Paleocrat, and support our show by going to Patreon. That's really how we're going to make this money. This is how we function, how we really earn our living, is by the individual donations of the people that listen to the show. Mm-hmm. The reason why we do that is because it removes us from the expectations of corporate sponsorship or people that will sponsor our show, and then we are no longer able to talk about certain topics.
And this is a big deal. And let me break this down for people. You know, when I was going to journalism school at Olivet College, we had to watch a documentary. And it was called The Corporation. And I encourage people to go check it out. It's a really good documentary. It talks, if I remember correctly, it talks about it uses kind of a UN model to determine whether or not corporations are psychopathic. If they're sociopaths, right? If it's a person, is it sociopathic? Is this person? But in it, there are some journalists. These are investigative journalists, the kind we need now, especially. And these people were going and they were investigating the stuff going on, and they stumbled upon a story that was huge, a really big deal, relevant. It was impactful to people in a negative way, and they needed to make this clear. The problem is that they worked for a network that was sponsored by a group that a chemical inside of, at the center of the story was a conflict. And it was a conflict between the truth of what was happening that investigators were looking at and the commercial interests of a corporation that was funding and paying money to this particular network. Well, at the end of the day, the investigative journalists got fired.
Can you believe that?
They were warned, you can't publish this. You cannot do this investigation. You can't make this public. This has been a TV show. And they said you can't do it. And they were going to anyway. They eventually got fired for making this effort, but it really stuck with me. And I said, I don't ever want to be part of something where I have some corporate head come down at me and say, hey, you're not allowed to talk about this topic that's a big deal to you and that you think people should know about because it conflicts with the people paying us money.
Yes. And so
that's just garbage.
And so the easiest way to get around that is to ask the people directly to donate. And if you do, you only have to donate about $1 an episode or none at all. You can always listen to our show for free. But we ask if you support us and you believe in what we do, that you do come to the show, you do support it. And if you donate over $1, you get extra bonus content. So look at that.
It's
so
really
many good things.
It's so easy. And we're going to be building on it more and more and more as we're moving forward, especially as we approach 2017. It's going to be a fantastic year. Our motto has kind of been upward and onward, or onward and upward. And we've been living it, and we've been enjoying this ride. And we're grateful that every single one of you are along the ride with us. And again, make sure if you love what we do and you want to continue to support us, and by doing that, you're not only making it so that we can expand on the equipment that we have here and the reach that we have by affording us time and opportunity to reach out to even other stations to get our show on those stations. But it just assures that you're going to get quality content, right? You're not going to get anything that comes through that funnel of entanglements that you're going to get almost anywhere else. And I got to say this, at night on Mondays between 10 and 12 Eastern Standard Time, for those in town, our competition is Ground Zero.
Yes.
If you don't want to hear Conspiracy Land, if you don't want to hear a show where everything, to what you say, Joe, when you talk about conspiracies and you say one of the things about conspiracy theorists, a lot of them, is that they don't have a conspiracy that they don't believe.
Yeah.
And that they don't entertain. And
they're
it's not
all
part
true.
of this. It's all true. And if you aren't down with that, and you're down for an alternative narrative that says we're willing to look at those exact same things, but we're going to say what is right, what's wrong, what's falsifiable, and we're going to provide you with the link so that you can decide for yourself. If that's what you want, make sure go to patreon.com/PaleoRadio.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's a great plug, and it is honestly this is what we want to do. I know we've been talking about it for a minute here, but truly, this is what we want to do for our career. It's what we want to do for a living, and the only way to do that is to make money while we do it.
And it's a big deal because a lot of people, I mean, listen, we get it all the time, Joe, where people say, man, I didn't even know you were a local show. I thought you were a national program. I thought you guys were in New York or you guys were somewhere else, and I didn't realize you were in Grand Rapids, or that you had other jobs, that you did other things, that this is literally the only way that you get paid is through Patreon. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's it. So please rid yourselves as listeners of this show, as lovers of this program, rid yourselves forever of the idea that we are paid by a corporate structure to do this program. We are not. No. And we choose that on purpose because we like you more. We believe in you. And we'd rather tie ourselves in a destiny that says we rely on listeners saying we support this program. We want this program to thrive. We want Joe to make a living doing this. Mm-hmm. We want Jeremiah to make a living. We want them to be able to tell Kay or Angela to be able to go home and say, hey, I brought some dough home, baby. Mm-hmm. And that is what we do. And people need to know this, because if they don't, they're not going to feel that it's necessary for them to participate. They're going to say, well, they're paid for. I mean, they're just going to be here forever.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. We rely on you. We're grateful for it. But make sure to check us out, patreon.com/PaleoRadio.
All right. Now we're going to move into a Vox article. North Carolina Republicans' shocking power grab explained. This was updated by Tara Golshin, and it was written December 16th. A prominent Republican got fewer votes than his opponent, but his party is rushing to enact sweeping changes that would limit the power of Democrats, potentially locking them out of policymaking for cycles to come. No, this isn't Donald Trump, and it isn't Republicans in Congress. In North Carolina, during late-night sessions on Wednesday, the Republican-controlled state legislature introduced a series of bills deliberately meant to cut the powers of the governor's office and the state's election oversight board. So there's some dirty dealings going on in NC. Definitely dirty dealings.
Massive. And I mean, it's crazy for them to come in and they lay it out. They lay out every single thing that these bills are accomplishing, and it's mind-blowing. It's unquestionable. It's unquestionable that they're doing this.
It's overt.
Overt. This is overt. Retaliation and restriction. Overt. And I mean, hey, part of me as I was reading it thought, this is politics. But then part of me thought, I don't want that to be the politics that we have, because then it's turned into that whole Citizens United deal where it's like, well, we can't let the other team just play that game. We both have to play it. And I don't want that either.
Well, and I particularly don't like Republican rhetoric that says that the government needs to be small and controlled when they walk out, but when they're there, it's smash and grab and loot and burn, and the government powers exceed all powers, grand and small. And then when they move out, then they go back into their camp of, we need small, limited government. You need to have these powers. They can't be this. They can't show this much power and influence. It's a game, and to me, honestly, it's kind of a joke, because I don't sit on either side of the camp, but there's not a laundry list of times where Democrats have reduced the powers to incoming Republican governors as often as it goes the other way.
And the contender that was going against Pat McCrory, narrow win on November 8th.
Very narrow.
Margin of victory, fewer than 10,000 votes, but McCrory didn't concede until December 5th. After a partial vote count concluded. But both of these bills have passed, and he signed both. He signed one of them on Friday. Okay,
yeah.
And it goes through, and it says, this article breaks it down and shows that this has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
For years.
Very long time.
That this has been building up and building up and building up.
And it says the bills include a requirement for the state Senate to approve the governor's cabinet picks, end governor control of election boards, and add a limit to the governor's influence over the University of North Carolina Board of Trustees, among others. So they would basically get to pick his cabinet, and they would control the election boards the whole time. So the governor is really not really governing.
And they would cut the number of positions working directly for the governor from 1,500 to 300. A number which was originally expanded from 400 for McCrory in 2013. So he started with more than the 300 he's walking out with.
He went from 400 to 1,500, now it's cutting back down to 300.
He needed that for small government.
That was for small government.
That was for small government that he did that.
Which begs to my point of what I was saying about the idea of a small limited government until you're in power.
Yeah, required that the governor's cabinet appointments be approved by the state Senate, which is currently controlled by Republicans. That's an interesting one. Change the state's nonpartisan Supreme Court election process to a partisan one.
Can you believe that?
Yeah, so you'd have D and R by the names on the ballot.
Both bills have passed, effectively crippling Cooper from exercising the powers of office that McCrory held himself. So this is a huge problem. And you said it's a longer history. So in 2011, the Republicans took control of both the House and the state Senate, and they passed a redistricting plan that would ensure Republican control in the state's representation, and attempted to pass sweeping voting restrictions that disproportionately affected Democratic voters, i.e. black voters, measures that have thus far been successfully changed or have been successfully challenged in the court as discriminatory. So these things have been challenged through the court, but what a rigmarole. I mean, really, it's just running people through the gauntlet. And we are spending a lot of time and effort solving very small, intricate problems from the state that otherwise wouldn't be there if we didn't have people purposely putting those blocks in the way.
When we come back, we're down to the final 10 minutes of this program. It's Monday, December 19th. You're listening to Paleo Radio. Still, no one has answered the question, what's the deadliest animal in the United States? The number is 616-656-1680.
You guys will have 6 minutes because at 11:55 we're going to give the big reveal, the most violent, dangerous animal in all of the United States. Coming up soon.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadioShow at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
Welcome back to 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, Paleo Radio. We have a couple callers on line. We are going to jump right to them, and we're going to have to go very quickly. First caller we have is Tom. Tom, how are you doing?
Good. I would say the one that kills the most humans would probably be the man.
No.
Good guess. Other mammals is up there, but I think that's what they did to facetiously add men in there. But it is not men. It is another animal.
No kidding.
But yeah, can you believe it or not? Yep.
No, I didn't. I really would have thought
when I give it away in a couple minutes here, I think people are going to go, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that." But it is one that that kind of is eluding some folks. It did for me as well. But,
okay.
But very good guess. I appreciate it, Tom.
Thank you for the phone call, Tom.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yep.
All right, and then our next caller we have is Dave. Dave calling from Reed City. This is right in my neck of the woods. How you doing, Dave?
I'm doing good. Is this Joe?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, we know each other sort of through our parents.
Oh, okay.
I know your uncles and stuff. It's great. A cat. It's a cat.
Cat. It is not a cat.
Oh,
but that's a very good guess.
Cats kill everything.
Yeah, they murder the crap out of birds. I can tell you that.
They're the number one killer of baby rabbits.
Number one killer of baby rabbits and birds. Cats are vicious, evil monsters, aren't they?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the call, Dave. I appreciate it.
All right, listen to Cut to the Chase.
Oh, we certainly will. Thank you for the pitch.
Have
a good one, Bye.
Before we make the announcement, Joe, about the deadliest animal, we want to just give our condolences again to everybody who was impacted by the great late Christopher Hitchens on December 15th. That marked 5 years since Christopher Hitchens died of cancer. And I read a memoriam, actually, at Why Evolution is True. And I thought it was fitting. He said, "There's no other humanist or atheist who so excelled in all the skills of oratory, writing, and thinking. And the man was ferociously eloquent and literate. There's nothing else to say except I wish he were here."
Wow. Yeah,
I miss him.
That's a great point.
I cried when he died, Joe.
I did too. Christopher Hitchens was a very, very good man. He was very honest.
Yeah, if we have a caller coming through, we want to wait.
We're going to wait.
Just in case, just bring that call straight over because we're running out of time here.
We will hold on because we want to give everyone the ample opportunity to guess what the most dangerous animal in the U.S. is.
And listen, if you win, if we get somebody who calls and you win, we're going to have a WPRR magnet as well as a Team Tiny Dancer sticker that will be available for you this week here at the radio station.
Yeah, so it's going to be great. We're going to kick it right in. Matt, how are you doing?
Hey, guys. I don't know about, I'm going by deadly or most deaths and injuries probably is white-tailed deer.
Ooh, white-tailed deer? No, they did not white-tailed deer. But they are dangerous.
There's so many accidents. They're not, they're not, violent.
Yes.
But you could call it a violent death, I guess, by a car accident.
That's a great point to bring up. Yeah, deer, obviously, with jumping in front of cars and everything, that could be involved for being.
Yeah. They're actually trying to. They're thinking about reinstating mountain lion because of it, because they'll cut down deaths about 60 deaths a year.
That's a great suggestion. In the case of the deadliest animal, though, it is very close, but it's a miss. I'll let you know. I'll break it away.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Joe, what is the deadliest animal? Because we're running out of time.
All right, we'll be very quick. But the deadliest animal it's actually a collection of them. Think small and in groups. Bees, wasps, and hornets kill more people than anybody else in the United States.
Yeah.
Bees, wasps, and hornets are responsible for 58 deaths a year. Other mammals, which I think would be including human beings, are responsible for 52, which is a wide range for mammals. Dogs kill 28 people a year. This is our caller that mentioned running and being attacked by pet dogs. Cows kill 20 people a year. Non-venomous arthropods, which would be just bugs that are non-venomous, kill 9. Spiders kill 7. Snakes and lizards kill 6. And alligators, sharks, and bears round out the bottom of the group with killing 1 person a year. Yeah. So watch out for them bees and wasps.
And I can hear people saying, right now, I can just hear it. People saying, those aren't animals. But if you go online, pretty much anything that's not a plant, a fungus, bacterium, virus, or protist is an animal, too.
Well,
in fact, you can find it at honeybeesweet.com. It talks about them being animals and how they're animals and insects.
Yeah, and
so
how insects are part of the animal kingdom.
That's right. So it was a little tricky. We got to admit.
It was a little tricky.
But I think we should do this more often, Joe. And we just have to make sure that next week when we come in, that we've got a good magnet for people who call in. We've got a good sticker that they can put on their car.
Yes, and I will tell you what, that magnet is sexy.
Yes.
And you are going to get whomever you are attracted to, whether it be man, woman, it doesn't matter your sexual orientation, whoever you're looking for will seek you out if you have that magnet on your car.
Oh, yes. It's like pheromones.
Yes. No matter what.
It's just like pheromones. You drive around town, you're going to be chased down by...
Yes. It's an aphrodisiac, almost like standing in front of an elevator with a cat sweater on.
It's like pure romance.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to know, we're selling love to you folks if you can answer these questions.
It's going to make all your dreams come true. It's totally true. But I was blown away by this, Joe. When I was thinking about it, I thought a lot of the same things that the people who called did.
Great
a lot of the callers, saying deer,
I think
white-tailed deer. How cool. And that's a Michigan thing.
And that though, too, bringing up white-tailed deer is a very good one because I didn't even think about that, how many cause accidents that cause deaths. Yes. So, I mean, that was by Matt. That was a very good assumption.
So, we're very grateful for today's episode. We're grateful that we're at 2 hours. We're grateful for every single one of the people who've tuned in and all of the callers that we had. It is literally a beautiful breath of fresh air, Joe. I love being able to come to this music right here and not complain.
Yes, we love it. This has been wonderful. We are very happy with a 2-hour time slot. If you guys are, please write us on Facebook or on Twitter at Paleo Radio Show. Let us know. We do a lot of games on our social media. We like to interact with everyone, and we would love to have you join the fun.
Make sure to subscribe to us. Get all the podcasts by going to Spreaker.com/Paleo Radio Show or finding us on iTunes. Make sure to write a review and make sure to check out our website at Spreaker.com/Paleo Radio.
Thank you guys very much for listening. You've been great, and we will see you next week.